My husband filed for divorce and laughed in my face, sure he had the upper hand. He didn't realize how much I had built for myself over the years. When the judge revealed my net worth, the tables turned, and he was left completely stunned. The sound of Michael's laughter, bright and careless, echoed through the sterile courtroom as he signed our divorce papers. 6 years of my life, summarized in a moment he clearly found hilarious. But little did he know, that smug smile was about to be wiped clean off his face, replaced by a shock that would taste sweeter than any victory I could have ever imagined. To understand that moment, you need to know a bit about the woman Michael thought he knew. I was Sarah, a small-town girl from Tennessee, freshly arrived in Nashville to conquer accounting at Vanderbilt. I had these big, corporate finance dreams, even though my background was as humble as they come. My parents, bless their hearts, drilled into me the value of hard work and saving every penny, lessons I'd carry with me long after I thought I'd outgrown them. I met Michael at a coffee shop, buried in my financial analysis textbook. He was everything I wasn't, a third-year law student from a Nashville dynasty, oozing that effortless confidence of someone who'd never seen a bill they couldn't pay. His first words to me: "You have potential. You just need the right guidance." At the time, I glowed, thinking it was a compliment. Looking back, it was a subtle jab, a chilling preview of everything our relationship would become. He was ambitious, charming, seemingly perfect, and incredibly interested in me, despite my ordinary background. Our romance felt like a whirlwind, fancy dinners, weekend escapes to Gatlinburg, a life I'd only seen in movies. But almost immediately, the guidance started. He picked apart my clothes, hinted at a more sophisticated haircut, and casually dismissed my college friends as being limited in worldview. My little part-time job, where I loved crunching numbers and solving financial puzzles, he called my little hobby. "Why exhaust yourself for pennies," he'd ask, "when I can give you everything you need?" He just couldn't grasp that my career wasn't about money, it was about my independence, my very identity. 18 months later, in Gatlinburg, he proposed. The ring glittered, the champagne sparkled, and the entire restaurant applauded. It felt like a fairy tale, and I said yes without a second thought. Our wedding was an intimate ceremony in Savannah, a quiet compromise against his family's demands for a grander Nashville affair. At least it was in a respectable location, even if it was simple, his mother, Margaret, remarked, her smile tight, never reaching her eyes. That was my first real taste of their polite dismissal, a foreshadowing of how they'd always view me, not quite good enough for their son. After a Caribbean honeymoon, we moved into his sleek, cold house in Belmead, one of Nashville's most exclusive neighborhoods. I tried to inject some warmth, some us, with photos and colorful art, but Michael preferred the minimalist aesthetic that showcased wealth, not personality. The cracks began to show. He questioned every decorating choice, criticized my friends, and constantly undermined my career. "Accounting is so common," he'd say, "you have the potential to be exceptional, but you're wasting it on bookkeeping." I tried to fit into his world, his circle of wives who shopped, spa-ed, and planned charity galas. They were outwardly pleasant, but I always felt like an outsider. I even overheard one referring to me as Michael's experiment with the middle class. His solution: "Try harder, Sarah. Update your wardrobe. Take up tennis." As if my identity was something to be molded and corrected. Those early years were a confusing paradox, showered with expensive gifts, yet starved of self-worth. I was slowly becoming what Michael wanted, a trophy wife, shiny and quiet, while the independent woman I once was, faded away. 2 years in, the tension boiled over. Michael's financial control became suffocating. He'd dissect my credit card statements, questioning every modest purchase, while splurging thousands on golf memberships or watches without a thought. Another set of professional development books. "That's $150 that could have been invested," he said, utterly oblivious to the irony. I found myself increasingly isolated. Visits to my parents became rare excuses. My college friends stopped calling after Michael's subtle jabs about their lack of sophistication. "Your friend Jessica asked if our wine was from California," he'd scoff. "It's embarrassing, Sarah." My career, once a source of pride, became a battleground. When offered a senior accountant promotion, Michael wasn't supportive. "Is the modest bump in salary worth the extra hours away from home? We're planning a family soon, remember." News to me. Every time I'd mention children, he'd claim the timing wasn't right. It was then I discovered financial consulting, finding a natural talent for investment patterns and strategic planning. Excited, I shared my dream of starting my own boutique firm. His response crushed me. "Sarah, be realistic. Business acumen isn't exactly your strong suit. Most small businesses fail. Why risk what we have?" Our approaches to money starkly highlighted our differences. He believed in conspicuous consumption, the right address, the right car, the right vacation, all for image. I, with my middle-class roots, believed in saving, investing wisely, finding value. As our third anniversary approached, his late nights became routine. Big client. Market analysis. Quarterly reports. The excuses varied, but his absence remained constant. I ate alone, slept alone, living the life of a single woman, but under the financial scrutiny of a child. Our first truly major argument erupted after his family's Christmas gathering. His mother, Margaret, pressed us about grandchildren. I mentioned I was ready, only for Michael to smoothly change the subject. Confronting him at home, his reaction was chilling. Children are a massive responsibility and expense, he said, loosening his tie. With your modest career and my family's expectations, any child of ours would need trust funds, private schooling, the right connections. We're not there yet financially. Not there yet? I asked, confused. Michael, you make 6 figures. Your family has generational wealth. What are we waiting for? His answer was a dagger. My money isn't the issue. You still haven't established yourself properly. What would you contribute to a child's future? The raw hurt of his words festered. His dismissive attitude toward my career, the way he called my salary insignificant, in another argument, solidified something in me. I needed financial independence. Not just for myself, but for my sanity. That week, I opened a separate bank account, at a different bank, setting up a small direct deposit. Not enough for Michael to notice, but enough to start building something of my own. I devoured books on investing, took free online courses, subscribed to entrepreneurship newsletters, all in private browsing, careful to leave no digital crumbs. The woman swept off her feet by grand gestures was slowly awakening to the gilded cage she lived in, planning her escape, one small step at a time. While Michael continued his late nights, I laid the foundation for my independence. With my growing separate savings, I registered Sarah Mitchell Financial Solutions and built a simple, professional website. My first challenge, working without Michael knowing. I converted our rarely used guest bedroom into a home office, telling him it was for continuing education to advance at the firm. He barely registered the change, dismissing it as cute ambition. Just don't let it interfere with our social obligations, was his only concern. My first client, Elena Rodriguez, came through a stroke of luck at our local coffee shop. I overheard her, the owner of a growing catering business, complaining about expensive financial advisors. I introduced myself, offered to help at a fraction of the cost, explaining I was building my portfolio. Elena took a chance on me, and the results were phenomenal. I identified inefficiencies, restructured her payments, and created an investment strategy that boosted her returns by 40% in 1 quarter. Elena became more than a client, she became a genuine friend. You have a gift, Sarah, she told me. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I worked late nights while Michael was away on increasingly frequent business trips. I converted our walk-in closet into a makeshift office for client calls, using blankets to dampen the sound. Each new client was both exhilarating and terrifying. Exhilarating because my business was growing, terrifying because discovery meant confrontation. The learning curve was steep. I made mistakes, undercharging, overpromising, but I learned quickly. I invested profits back into the business, carefully hiding charges or making cash purchases. Michael remained oblivious, attributing my growing confidence to finally adjusting to our lifestyle. A pivotal moment came when my financial restructuring for a tech startup helped them secure a major funding round. The success story was featured in a Nashville business magazine. I declined to be mentioned by name, but the credibility brought in larger clients. Through Elena, I met Patricia Chen, a serial entrepreneur who became both a client and a mentor. You're charging too little for your expertise, she told me bluntly. Triple your prices. She was right. When I raised my rates, I attracted more established businesses willing to pay for quality. Patricia also introduced me to angel investing and strategic portfolio management. Cash loses value sitting still, she explained. You need to make your money work for you. Under her guidance, I began making strategic investments, including in her new AI-driven fintech startup. The exhilaration of watching both my business and investments grow was intoxicating. For the first time since meeting Michael, I felt truly alive, purposeful, and independent. I was building something valuable, entirely on my own merits. Throughout this period, I maintained the facade of just being Michael's wife. I nodded politely at social functions, attended his dinners, and played the supportive spouse flawlessly. All while running a growing business from our home and making investment decisions that would alter the course of my life. My double life was exhausting, but empowering. Each client, each successful consultation, each investment return was a step toward the freedom I increasingly realized I wanted, needed, from my controlling marriage. Then, 4 years into our marriage, the facade crumbled. A text message popped up on Michael's lock screen while he was in the shower. From someone named A. It read, "Missing you already. Last night was," the rest disappeared, but the seed of suspicion was planted. Michael had been distant, often reeking of unfamiliar perfume he blamed on hugging colleagues. Instead of confronting him, I decided to investigate. I noted his patterns: the late Thursday meetings, the phantom weekend conferences, the specific upscale restaurant. The following Thursday, I told Michael I was visiting Elena for a corporate event. Instead, I parked near that restaurant. At 8:30, his BMW pulled in. 10 minutes later, a red Mercedes arrived, and out stepped Amanda Walsh, his colleague. I watched them embrace, a kiss in the parking lot, actions no colleagues would ever take. My hands shook as I took photos, my stomach a hollow pit of betrayal and confirmation. After 30 minutes, I walked in. They were at a corner table, his hand on hers. "This explains the late meetings," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Michael jerked back, his face cycling through shock, guilt, and finally, annoyance. Amanda had the decency to look embarrassed. "Sarah, this isn't what it looks like," Michael began, using that smooth, lawyerly tone. "Really?" I replied. "Because it looks like you're having dinner with your girlfriend while your wife thinks you're working." The conversation was surreal. He offered a half-hearted apology, claimed it was just physical, and had the audacity to blame me. "You've been so wrapped up in your little accounting projects," he hissed, as diners started noticing. "You've become boring, Sarah, unambitious. When was the last time you made an effort in our marriage?" I left the restaurant, driving aimlessly for hours before returning home. Michael came back past midnight, offering promises to end the affair, counseling, even a second honeymoon. For reasons I didn't fully understand then, I pretended to consider it. "I need time," I told him, which wasn't a lie. I needed time, not to forgive him, but to plan my next steps. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in deception, on both our parts. Michael became temporarily attentive, bringing flowers, suggesting date nights, while I began quietly consulting with divorce attorneys. Rebecca Torres, a formidable lawyer recommended by Patricia, laid out the reality. "Tennessee is an equitable distribution state," she explained. "Without a prenup, marital assets are divided fairly, not necessarily equally." I learned about our financial entanglements, the complexities of divorcing someone with family money, and the importance of documenting everything. "Knowledge is power, especially in divorce," Rebecca said. My cautious information gathering screeched to a halt when Michael found my browser history. I'd forgotten private browsing for one search: Tennessee Divorce Asset Division Process. His rage was immediate, terrifying. He cornered me in the kitchen, waving his phone, a screenshot of my search on display. "Is this what you've been doing? Planning to divorce me and take my money?" His face was crimson. "Let me make this clear, Sarah. You'll have nothing without me. Nothing. My family's lawyers will make sure of it." I remained calm, which only infuriated him more. "I'm not planning anything, Michael. I was just researching after what happened. Wouldn't you do the same?" He seemed mollified, but the threat lingered. That night, I moved all my important business documents to secure cloud storage and transferred digital records to drives I kept in a safety deposit box he knew nothing about. The final discovery came 3 weeks later. Organizing our closet, a task Michael never touched, I found a Tiffany & Company receipt tucked inside his dress shoes. A diamond tennis bracelet, almost $12,000, dated 2 months prior. I had never received such a gift. Even knowing about the affair, this tangible evidence of his investment in another woman stung in a way I hadn't expected. He'd spent our money, supposedly our money, on Amanda. Before I could process this new betrayal, I heard the front door open. Voices, Michael and a woman, laughing in our entryway. I remained frozen in the closet as they entered our bedroom, clearly not expecting me home. I stepped out to find Michael and Amanda embracing at the foot of our bed, the bed we had shared for 4 years. "Sarah," Michael exclaimed, not bothering to step away. "You're supposed to be at work." "I took a half day," I replied, surprised by my own composure. Clearly, I should have called first. What followed wasn't the dramatic confrontation I'd seen in movies. Instead, Michael became coldly pragmatic. "Well, this saves me having to have a difficult conversation," he said, straightening his tie. "I want a divorce, Sarah. Amanda and I are planning a future together." His confidence was absolute as he outlined his terms. He'd generously allow me to keep my personal items and a small settlement to get back on my feet. The house, our investments, the furniture, all his. "My lawyers will be in touch," he concluded, seemingly confused by my lack of hysteria. You should find somewhere else to stay starting tonight. Actually, I said, as this is still legally my residence, I'll be staying. You and Amanda are welcome to find a hotel. His face darkened at my defiance, but Amanda tugged his arm. Let's go, Michael. We can deal with this later. As they left, Michael turned back for one parting shot. You'll regret not taking my generous offer. By the time my lawyers are done, you'll be lucky to afford a trailer park in the worst part of Nashville. I closed the door behind them, leaned against it, and for the first time since discovering his affair, I smiled. Michael had no idea what was coming. The day after I caught Michael and Amanda, he moved most of his things out. I changed the locks that same afternoon. Legally questionable, yes, but it bought me time to document everything before he could remove anything else valuable. Michael's assumption about my financial naivete became glaringly obvious in his initial settlement offer, a one-time payment of $50,000 and 6 months of living expenses. In exchange, I'd make no claims on any other assets, including the house. He's testing the waters, Rebecca explained. He assumes you don't know your rights, or the true extent of your marital assets. With Rebecca's guidance, I formally rejected the offer and initiated financial discovery. Michael's response was to delay and obfuscate. Standard tactic, Rebecca assured me. They hope to drain your resources and patience. What Michael didn't realize was that I wasn't depending on his disclosures. I'd been meticulously tracking our finances for years, including accounts he thought I knew nothing about. More importantly, I had my own growing resources that he was completely oblivious to. After careful consideration, we made a strategic decision, would temporarily withhold the true scope of my business and investments during initial negotiations. Tennessee law generally considered businesses started during marriage to be marital property, but Rebecca identified a potential exception, given that Michael had actively discouraged my business and provided no support. We'll disclose everything at the right time, she assured me. But for now, let him believe his own narrative. While the legal process inched forward, Michael launched a social offensive. Mutual friends began avoiding my calls. Invitations dried up. Even our friendly neighbors became coldly professional. I later learned Michael was spreading a narrative that I had cheated on him, that I was unstable, and he was divorcing me despite his best efforts. In his circles, his version was accepted without question. The pain of this social exile was unexpectedly sharp. People I'd shared holidays and confidences with, vanished. All except Elena and Patricia, who never wavered. People who believe gossip without hearing both sides aren't worth your energy, Elena told me. Focus on building your new life, not mourning the old one. Michael's attempts to intimidate me escalated. Late-night calls with veiled threats about making sure I'd never work in this city again, even a suggestion he'd report my business for tax irregularities, an empty threat, as my finances were meticulously documented. His family joined the pressure campaign. His mother, Margaret, called to reason with me. We always knew you weren't right for Michael, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. Take what's offered and move on with dignity. I maintained my composure, a skill perfected during years of Shannon family gatherings. Thank you for your concern, Margaret. I'll be guided by my attorney's advice. Michael's overconfidence began working against him. Believing I had no resources to fight, he made several critical mistakes. He failed to disclose investment accounts I had documentation for. He underreported his stock portfolio. He claimed certain assets were separate property when they were clearly marital funds. Rebecca documented every discrepancy, meticulously building a case that would shred his credibility. Meanwhile, my company experienced exponential growth during the separation. A financial restructuring plan I designed for a regional restaurant chain helped them avoid bankruptcy and triple their profits, leading to industry features. I declined interviews, but the professional recognition brought a flood of new clients. The major breakthrough came when I secured a contract with a national retail chain, a six-figure deal that transformed my business from successful to exceptional. I hired 4 employees, rented a professional office space downtown, and began turning down clients whose values didn't align with my company's mission. All of this happened as Michael and his team continued to characterize me as a struggling bookkeeper dependent on her husband's support. His perception of me as the naive small-town girl, dazzled by his wealth, was so calcified he couldn't fathom my success. During this time, Patricia introduced me to a group of angel investors. My blend of practical financial expertise and technological vision impressed them enough to offer seed funding for a revolutionary financial planning app I'd been developing. The app, using AI to provide personalized financial advice, launched in beta with overwhelming positive response. Within 6 months, we had 50,000 users and were fielding acquisition offers from major financial institutions. I also made strategic investments in other startups, leveraging my network and expertise. My portfolio diversified across technology, real estate, and emerging markets, all carefully managed. The night before our final court date, I sat alone in the house that had never felt like home, reflecting. For years earlier, I'd been so eager to please Michael that I'd started to lose myself. His betrayal, painful as it was, had forced me to rediscover my strength, my ambition, my worth. I packed a small overnight bag. Regardless of the judge's decision, I wouldn't spend another night in the space where my marriage had unraveled. My new penthouse apartment was ready, purchased through an LLC Michael knew nothing about, furnished with pieces I'd chosen for their beauty and comfort, not status. As I zipped the bag closed, my phone chimed. A text from Patricia, "Remember who you are tomorrow, not who he tried to make you be." With those words in my heart, I prepared to face the final act of my marriage. The morning of our court date dawned clear and crisp. I wore a navy blue suit, conservative but confident, with a single piece of jewelry, a small diamond pendant Elena and Patricia had given me for my business's second anniversary. My Independence Diamond, they called it. I arrived early. Michael was already there, looking expensive in a tailored charcoal suit, his attorney, David Harrison, beside him. Michael smirked, whispering something to David that made them both chuckle. His confidence was palpable. He believed this was a mere formality before his inevitable victory. Rebecca arrived moments later, immaculate in a burgundy suit, radiating a quiet competence that had reassured me from our first meeting. "Ready?" she asked, her expression unreadable. "More than ready," I replied. Judge Catherine Williams' courtroom was intimidating, its austerity matched only by the judge herself, a woman with silver hair and penetrating eyes, known for fairness but little patience for games. As proceedings began, Michael put on a performance worthy of an Oscar. His testimony painted him as the devoted husband who had supported his wife's modest career ambitions, only to be repaid with ingratitude and unreasonable demands. "I just want a fair resolution, Your Honor," he said, his voice modulated to convey reasonable disappointment. "I've offered Mrs. Shannon a generous settlement that would allow her to maintain a comfortable lifestyle while she rebuilds her career." David presented their case, highlighting Michael's family wealth as separate property, minimizing my contributions, and asserting the house was primarily his. Throughout, I maintained my composure, neither reacting to his fabrications nor betraying emotion. Judge Williams occasionally glanced my way, her expression unreadable. When it came time to sign the initial divorce decree, separating our marital status while financial matters were finalized, Michael made a show of it. He signed with a flourish, a laugh escaping his lips as he capped his Montblanc pen. As he returned to his seat, he passed close enough to whisper, "Enjoy going back to your parents' farm." Rebecca's presentation began methodically, a stark contrast to David's theatrics. She presented evidence of Michael's financial deceptions, the hidden accounts, the lavish spending on Amanda, the pattern of control. "Your Honor," Rebecca stated, "Mr. Shannon has not been forthcoming about the full extent of marital assets as required by Tennessee law." She submitted documentation of accounts Michael had failed to disclose, dates, account numbers, approximate balances. Michael shifted. Uncomfortably, his smug expression replaced by nervous glances at David. David requested a brief recess, which Judge Williams denied. "I believe we should continue, Counselor. I'm particularly interested in hearing about these undisclosed assets." The atmosphere in the courtroom tightened as Rebecca methodically dismantled Michael's financial deceptions. Judge Williams' expression grew increasingly stern. "Furthermore, Your Honor," Rebecca continued, "we request that the court consider Mrs. Shannon's separate property that was established during the marriage, but without any contribution or support from Mr. Shannon." This was the moment we'd prepared for. Judge Williams looked up. "Please elaborate, Counselor." "Mrs. Shannon established a financial consulting business during the marriage. Mr. Shannon not only provided no support for this venture, but actively discouraged it and belittled her professional ambitions, as evidenced by these communications." Rebecca presented emails and text messages where Michael had dismissed my business as a hobby. Judge Williams reviewed the documents, then addressed me directly for the first time. "Mrs. Shannon, the court requires full financial disclosure from both parties. Have you submitted complete information about this business venture?" "Not yet, Your Honor," I replied, exactly as planned. "My complete financial statement is ready for submission today." Rebecca handed the clerk a sealed envelope. The document we had strategically held back. "I request that the court review Mrs. Shannon's financial statement before making any determinations about asset division," Rebecca said. Judge Williams nodded, opened the envelope. The courtroom fell silent as she read, her eyebrows rising slightly, the only indication of surprise from the otherwise composed judge. After what felt like an eternity, Judge Williams looked up. "For the record, I will read the summary of Mrs. Shannon's assets." My heart pounded as she began. Sarah Mitchell Financial Solutions, a financial consulting firm established 3 years ago. Current valuation based on revenue, contracts, and intellectual property, $2,100,000. Michael's head snapped up, his disbelief almost comical. Investment portfolio, including technology stocks, real estate, and startup investments, $11,900,000. Michael gripped the table, his knuckles white. Real estate holdings, 2 properties purchased within the last 18 months, valued at $1,200,000. By now, Michael looked physically ill, his face drained of color, his body rigid with shock. Beside him, David whispered frantically, but Michael seemed unable to process anything. Total disclosed assets, $15,200,000, Judge Williams concluded. The courtroom remained silent. Michael stared at me as if seeing a stranger. In that moment, I felt no triumph, no vindication, just a profound relief that the truth was finally on record. Judge Williams broke the silence. Mr. Shannon, do you wish to revise any of your previous statements regarding Mrs. Shannon's financial dependence on you? Michael seemed incapable of speech. David quickly stood. Your Honor, we were unaware of these assets. We contend that as they were acquired during the marriage, Mr. Shannon is entitled to an equitable portion. Rebecca was prepared. Your Honor, we direct the court's attention to the prenuptial agreement signed by both parties prior to marriage, specifically Clause 15. This was our ace. Rebecca had discovered a clause Michael's own lawyers had included years ago. Any business enterprise created by either spouse during the marriage without capital investment from the other spouse shall remain separate property in the event of divorce. It was likely included to protect Michael's potential ventures, Rebecca explained. However, the language applies equally to Mrs. Shannon's business, which she built without any financial contribution from Mr. Shannon. Judge Williams reviewed the agreement, nodding slowly. The language is indeed clear. Ms. Torres, please continue. Rebecca outlined how I had built my business from scratch, using my own savings and reinvesting profits, all while Michael actively discouraged my efforts. She presented statements from clients and mentors attesting to my independent work. Throughout Rebecca's presentation, I watched Michael, the man who had laughed while signing our divorce papers just hours earlier. He sat frozen, his confident demeanor shattered. Amanda, who had been sitting in the gallery, quietly slipped out of the courtroom. Judge Williams took 20 minutes to review all documents before delivering her ruling. When she returned, her decision was clear. Based on the evidence presented and the terms of the prenuptial agreement, the court finds that Sarah Mitchell Financial Solutions and the resulting investment portfolio constitute separate property belonging solely to Mrs. Shannon. Michael made a strangled sound, somewhere between a gasp and a protest. Furthermore, Judge Williams continued, given Mr. Shannon's failure to fully disclose marital assets as required by law, the court is inclined to view the division of remaining marital assets in a light more favorable to Mrs. Shannon. The rest of her ruling was a blur of legal terms, but the outcome was undeniable. I would keep my business, my investments, and my properties. Additionally, I would receive a greater portion of our actual marital assets due to Michael's deception. The house would be sold, with proceeds divided according to a formula that heavily favored me. As we stood to leave, Michael approached me, his lawyer trying unsuccessfully to hold him back. You planned this, he hissed, his face contorted with rage and humiliation. All these years, you were just waiting to take me down. I looked at the man I had once loved, now a stranger consumed by his own narrative of victimhood. No, Michael, I said, my voice calm but firm. I built something while you were busy destroying what we had. That's the difference between us. Rebecca gently guided me away, leaving Michael standing alone in the emptying courtroom, the remnants of his superiority complex lying in shambles around him. Walking out of the courthouse that day felt less like a victory and more like a profound liberation. The crushing weight of deception, both Michael's and my own necessary secrecy, lifted from my shoulders with each step down those marble stairs. Today, my company has expanded internationally. My investments continue to grow, and I've used my resources to establish a foundation dedicated to helping women achieve financial independence. Michael attempted reconciliation once he knew my net worth, of course. But I had moved far beyond the woman who once sought his approval. If you're watching this and facing your own crossroads of underestimation or betrayal, remember that sometimes what seems like an ending is actually a beginning in disguise. Your worth isn't determined by someone else's inability to see it. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes losing what you thought you wanted leads you directly to what you truly deserve.